Hello and welcome to another video by me, Wasim from Breakout Solutions and Decrypting Crypto. Today, I'm going to continue our conversation around El Salvador. So if you guys have seen our previous video, we'll put a link in the description here, where I spoke about how El Salvador, how President Nayib Bukele has actually changed the landscape of El Salvador and the economy, and is growing right now. Now, one of the things that I spoke about last time was a 95% reduction in crime in El Salvador. Now, this doesn't come without a cost. So if you don't know much about El Salvador and what was happening there, El Salvador has been rampaged by gang violence since 1991 at the end of the Civil War. And there was a gang called the MS-13, which was one of the most dangerous and largest gangs in the world, with over 60,000 members. This gang was holding El Salvador hostage for the last 30 years or so, with an average of almost 10 murders a day in El Salvador. El Salvador was actually coined as the murder capital of the world, and now it's known as Bitcoin country, as you would have seen in my previous video. So recently, there was a video that was released by President Nayib Bukele, as well as the El Salvadorian government, showing what they've done with the prisoners, and a mega prison which is housing about 40,000 prisoners in one prison. So it's a huge prison and a massive step forward. Now, since then, mainstream media has come out and attacked the country of El Salvador and President Nayib Bukele, saying that this was an infringement on human rights. So I'm going to go through, show you some of the headlines that are out there in the mainstream media right now, and then we're going to go through and look at the things and the laws and the changes that President Nayib Bukele has actually done in El Salvador since getting into office in 2018. So let's get straight into it. I'm going to start sharing my screen here and showing you some of these headlines. All right, so first up, we've got here news.com.au. Eliminating this cancer, 2,000 gangsters herd like animals. No mattresses, only 2 toilets for every 100 men, and a promise that they will never leave. This country has created the worst prison on earth. Now, this is actually not true. A lot of this stuff is fabricated, but it is true that he has over 40,000, and they're not suspected gang members. They were actually judicially convicted criminals that are in there. They're not suspected gang members. This is all fabrication by mainstream media. And I want to get to the source of that in a few moments. The next thing we have here is El Salvador's mega prison criticized by right groups welcomes first inmates. So again, they're talking about human rights. And we're going to talk about these so-called human rights that they're talking about right now, and compare what was happening in El Salvador versus what's happening now. The confronting pictures that capture El Salvador's crackdown on gangsters. Okay, the first 2,000 inmates have been moved to a mega prison. The complex will eventually hold more than 40,000 prisoners. It is part of Nayib Bukele's tough policy on gang crimes. 9 News, inside the terrorism confinement center, Central America's toughest prison. Okay, and this has just got some images of what's happening in there. Okay, these are all screenshots of the video that was actually released by the government themselves. So this is all true, and there's a video that was released. You can go onto President Bukele's Twitter, and you will see the actual video. This one here is from the Daily Mail. Men are pressed up against one another like animals in a battery farm, and he looks around the El Salvador mega jail, capable of holding 40,000 inmates in 32 mass cells. Rafael Rowe asks, is this the most hellish prison on earth? Now, let's not forget the hell that the El Salvadorian population was living under. They couldn't even get out of their houses after 6 o'clock. The whole country had to shut down at 6 p.m. every single day because of these gangsters. El Salvador's moved suspected gang members to a 40,000 capacity mega prison. Okay, 2,000 inmates transferred as part of the president's crackdown. Now, again, they used the word suspected, but they were judicially convicted criminals that are in these gangs. So let's have a look at the actual news article that was done on Reuters. So on my Twitter, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll be able to see this. So let's have a look at this, and then we'll get into this news tweet that was done by an investigative journalist over there in Twitter. So this is the actual tweet right here. This is the tweet by Reuters. It says El Salvador's government moved thousands of suspected gang members to a newly opened mega prison, the latest step in controversial crackdown on crime that has caused the Central American nation's prison population to soar. Now, first of all, as I said, they are judicially convicted criminals. These people were holding the country hostage. There was an average of around up to 10 murders a day, let alone the rape, the women forced into prostitution, the extortion of businesses, and every violent crime known to humanity. Now, one thing we must understand, Reuters owns the Associated Press, and all the mainstream media get their news from Reuters and the Associated Press, and Reuters is owned by the Rothschilds. So now that we've got this out of the way, let's have a look at what Charlie McKenzie had to say about this. So Charlie McKenzie did a tweet recently on the 27th of Feb, that was about 3 days ago, or 2 days ago actually, and he basically says, he basically goes through all the things that President Bukele has actually done to move the country forward. So let's look at that. Number one, has implemented many progressive laws since taking office. Contrary to concerns about authoritarianism, these initiatives have been aimed at providing the quality of life for these people. Here are some of the laws that showcase his commitment to positive change. Number one, anti-corruption. So prior to President Bukele's place in office or taking office, corruption was rampant in El Salvador. The country was very, very poor. They were very, the politicians were stealing money from the population. They were taking money from the IMF and lining their pockets. They were taking money from gangsters and lining their pockets. So all of these people that were in charge were actually corrupt politicians that were actually causing more harm to the people than good. Since President Bukele came into power in 2019, he changed that. So they put in anti-corruption laws. Just check out the audacity of former President Francisco Flores Perez. On the 16th of September 2014, was arrested on corruption charges for allegedly misappropriating $15 million during his presidency. Social welfare programs. Bukele has implemented several social welfare programs, including the Family Solidarity Program, which improves financial assistance to families in need, and new ID sponsorship programs, which provide scholarships to students from low-income backgrounds. So he's looking after the family unit. He's providing education for his people. Education. 2020, Bukele announced a series of education reforms, including the creation of a new online education platform and distribution of laptops to public schools. 16,000 early childhood teachers are being trained. So he's giving laptops to schools. He's training 16,000 new teachers. He's focusing on education and getting people to become better citizens and giving them a brighter future. President Bukele is also focused on infrastructure with upgrades to things like to a new airport and upgrades to the current airport, and also construction of new hospitals in San Salvador and Bitcoin City. Now, I spoke about Bitcoin City in my last video. Territorial control. So in 2019, he announced territorial control where the military is actually coming into areas that are targeted areas that are under gang control. And then by doing so, he's taking control of these, he's taking back the control of these areas away from the gangs and back to the state. Recently, Bukele constructed a new prison, and over 2,000 gang members have been transferred to the Center of Confinement of Terrorism. Now, according to the locals, the economy can stay open beyond the hour of 6 p.m. So as I said before, while these gangs were running rampant and pillaging the community and murdering people in and out every single day, the economy had to shut down at 6 p.m. Now, can you imagine being under such a regime and being held hostage by gangs? I'm in Australia. We've got about 25 million population or so. Imagine 1% of that population were one single gang that were controlling the streets, and the government had no control over them. What would the people do? This is basically what was happening in El Salvador. El Salvador has a population of 6 million people, or just over 6 million, and this gang had over 60,000 members. So around 1% of the population was actually gang members, and they were controlling the streets after that. it was actually coined by mainstream media as the murder capital of the world. So in El Salvador has dealt with violent crimes since the end of the Civil War and reached its highest in many years, and was called the murder capital of the world. So since 1991, these gangs were running rampant since the end of the Civil War, and they were causing havoc all over. If we want to have a look at what has actually happened since President Bukele took office, this is the data. So President Bukele came into office in about June 2019. Now, prior to that, you can see that the daily homicide rate was 9.3, 7.4, 7.7, 10.8, 9.2. And then it started going down all the way to 0.4. Now, they have had 300 days of zero homicides right now. Now, not only did he capture and imprison these gangs and these gang members, put them through judicial system, they've been judicially trialed and proven guilty. He's actually created a gang rehabilitation program, which is aimed to helping these people, giving them the skills and education and the work skills to go out after they've served their sentence, to go back out and reintegrate into society. Number 12, a higher minimum pension. So Mr. Bukele has actually increased the law to a minimum pension for retirees from $207 to $304 per month. Now, I know for most of us in the West, that doesn't sound like a lot of money, but I guarantee you, in a lot of these developing countries, $300 a month can actually is life-changing, an extra $100. So he actually increased the pension by 46% compared to previous to what people were getting. Now, not only that, he's actually made it a universal pension. So he's expanded the pension to anybody over the age of 60, regardless of whether they've contributed to the pension system previously. So this now allows everybody, whether they've had formal employment or not. Mind you, this is a developing, very, very poor country. So a lot of people would not have had formal employment, or have been doing like, side businesses or farming or hustling on the street, selling stuff, etc. So they weren't formally employed. So a lot of these people won't even have a pension because they didn't contribute to it. But now he's expanded it to everybody over the age of 60 can get $304 a month. He's also introduced the Glass of Milk program, which provides free milk to children under the age of 5 to improve their nutrition and their health. Okay, he's also created the Solidarity Network, which is a program that provides financial assistance to vulnerable families, including single-parent households, the elderly, and people with disability. He's also created the Solidarity Fund for micro-entrepreneurial families. So a lot of these countries will have a lot of families that will do like businesses on the side, like as you can see here, street food or whatever they can just to get by. So he's created a fund to help these businesses and therefore increase entrepreneurship in his economy and his country. Now, we all know that entrepreneurs are the ones that make the economy grow. They are the ones that make the economy turn. So without entrepreneurs, we wouldn't have much of an economy. So the next thing he's done is he hasn't even forgotten about the animals. In 2020, he signed a new animal welfare law which establishes protection for domestic, farm, and wild animals. The laws set standards for animal care and prohibits animal cruelty, abuse, and mistreatment. Now, on top of that, he created the Shiva Pets Hospital, where people can bring their pets and everything is a flat rate of 25 cents. Mind you, in America, in the US, even here in Australia, pets are very, very expensive. An emergency visit to the pet can cost up to $8,000 in the US. That's around $12,000 Australian. Over there, in El Salvador, people can bring their pets and then pay nothing more than 25 cents for care. And last but not least, El Salvador, as I've mentioned previously and I've spoken about multiple times, El Salvador has adopted Bitcoin as legal tender, and this aims to boost financial inclusion, open up the country to decentralization, move away from the IMF and the SWIFT system, which are all centralized and controlled by the ultra wealthy. And this one move itself, as you guys would have seen in my previous video, it's increased GDP, it's increased businesses, increased tourism, increased energy production, increased export. It has been a game changer for the country of El Salvador. So these are just a few of the many things that Mr. President Nayib Bukele is doing in El Salvador to make the country a better place. Now, follow us more for more information, and make sure you like, subscribe, and push that notification bell to make sure that you don't miss any of our live streams or any of our videos that we are uploading. That's it for me now. Have a great day, guys, and peace out. And as I always say, stack sats and sack banks. Bye-bye.